Hi, Kimberly. Thank you so much for coming on the Emotional Leads podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
I am so excited too because we have known each other for quite a while. I was actually coming to you for my own hormone health, and it just expanded from there. And we're going to get into that in the podcast. But one of the things that I love that I actually just mentioned to you offline is we would talk, and I could have talked to you for so much longer every time I came to visit you, even though you have a very compassionate approach where you give time to people. So I thought this would be a wonderful space for everyone to hear our conversations and us not to have the same time limit. So thank you. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
I'm
I
excited.
I'm excited too, and I appreciate that about you as a practitioner. You have been super compassionate, super knowledgeable, and we have women over 40 who are absolutely just struggling right now. And that is
Yeah.
why sharing you today is going to be so valuable. What I would love to know from you though, knowing the women that you work with, when people listen to this episode, how would you like women to feel when they walk away?
I feel like in general in the medical space, and I think things are shifting, but as a general rule, I feel like we present ourselves as kind of the subordinate in the medical office as a patient, right? They come in and we are essentially like we're dictated what to do. Do this, this, and this. And still, I hear so many women. I actually just had a patient tell me, like, you're wasting my time. If you're not willing to go on that, then you're wasting my time, and we're no longer going to have this patient care relationship. And I hope that patients or women in general understand that they can find healthcare providers that want to have a working relationship with them. Because I tell my patients all the time, I'm not going to follow you around. And the reality is I have upwards of 1,500 patients, and I'm never going to think about you off of the time that we have immediate space. When I shut down our meeting, I really don't think of you. There's a few times that I certainly are concerned or worried, but I'm not the one doing the work. I'm not the one putting in the effort to make the changes. And so I do feel like there has to be a working relationship with your healthcare provider, and that you deserve a healthcare provider that will give you that type of relationship where I advise you what to do, and then you go home and you do those things. And if you aren't doing them, you come back and openly say, it was kind of a flop. It didn't work for me. What else can we try? Because I just think women, we walk into an office and we're, kind of cowered over and told, this is what you need to do and do it. Well, too bad.
And that's so true because I think of our parents' generation that they would go in and they literally would listen to everything and feel like they were at fault if they couldn't follow through or if they didn't understand it. And you're really good about working with each person as an individual and wondering why they can't do what they're doing. And that's
Yeah.
why I love working with you and sending people to you. And speaking of that, you had some health issues and I would love to know, like, how did that shape how you're working with your patients right now? But also, how did that shape you moving more into the functional world?
Yeah. So I've always had an interest in the function world. I think I grew up with a very granola mother. I guess we can term that granola or crunchy. So my mom was always very granola. She was very energy driven, lots of supplements, health foods. I can remember my mom used to count my fruit snacks and put them in my lunch. So I was always raised kind of in that health conscious environment. And so when when I kind of entered into the medical field, the first physician I worked for was actually an internist out of Yale, and she was brilliant. And she had this kind of balance between this functional kind of holistic feel, but then, of course, very, very Western medicine driven because of her Yale and internal needs with her patients. But she got into hormone replacement back in the early 2000s. And I can remember reading all of the books. And I was in my 20s. Hormones were not on my radar at all. But it was something that was really interesting because I saw these patients come in and feel better when they were seeing her. And I was like, this is really fascinating. But we were still living under the guise of like, hormones are scary, they'll give you cancer, right? And so when I got the job 12 years ago working with a functional health medical doctor here in St. Augustine, I got to really learn so much. And patients would come in and I would even be skeptical. I would eye roll through some of these things. I'd be like, oh gosh, this can't possibly work. And then I saw the numbers shift and I was like, oh. wait a minute, that did work. Wow. Okay. There might not be clinical studies on this, but it's working. I see it working. And then when I got sick with an autoimmune disease after the passing of my mother. And I saw multiple healthcare providers, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was deep in grief. I wasn't thinking straight. You're not actually supposed to be your own healthcare provider. It's not a good idea. And so I went to multiple cardiologists because I had this racing heart. And I went to multiple endocrinologists after I realized it was thyroid related. And nobody could tell me how to heal my body. They just kept handing me pill after pill. Just take this, just take this. And I hated that answer. And so I started listening to different podcasts and reading different books. And I had already had this kind of background knowledge of it works. And so I started doing it on myself. I went deep into gut health and deep into mental health and how much your body keeps the score. And when I finally kind of lived the grief of losing my mother and healed my gut and healed my nutrient profile, all of my autoimmune disease, I had one, went into remission. And so it's shifted because I listen better. I think I always was a good listener. I can't say that I wasn't, but I listen better now. And I feel like I am capable of putting the puzzle pieces together. And I just trust a little bit of my instinct and a lot of my knowledge to say, okay, I think this is what we need to do. And I've actually had a lot of patients say, you just have this natural instinct to make it just right for us. And I'm like, well, I just feel like this is what's right for you. And I do practice individualized medicine. That's what I want for my patients. I want each patient to have an individual plan that works best for them and the life that they're living and the history that they have. And I think that's where me getting sick really helped that piece, all of that together, was it was easy to say, well, I think the grief is really a bottom line to my own illness.
Wow. You just said so many wonderful things in there. You mentioned The Body Keeps the Score, and that book is also amazing
So
because,
good.
yes, because we don't want to admit that trauma hangs out in our bodies. And until we really heal that, we feel it, and everyone feels it in different ways. And listening to our own bodies is so impossible for some women with the things that they're going through, whether it's menopause symptoms or family or the grief.
Yeah.
So I love that you do that and you have that individual feeling about it, but you're looking so, and that's why the functional part of it is amazing. You look outside of just the medical and just the test scores, which I do love. You do a lot of testing, which I do
Yes.
appreciate. So let's talk about the women that are coming to see you. When they come in, what are some of the top things that they're coming in to see you for?
I mean, different groups, different things. And yeah, at this point, my reputation's growing. So it used to be that hormones were my bread and butter. And so most of the people walking through were women. I would say 80% of my practice is women. And the men I see are usually the wives of like, I found a healthcare provider. You should meet her. But generally speaking, I would say about 80% of my patient population is women. And so when they come through, in those younger years, when we're talking hormones, they come in with tachycardia or elevated heart rate. They come in with anxiety. A lot of women in their 40s come in and say, I just am not happy anymore. And it's not depression. It's I'm not satisfied with my life. And there is a lot of shift that happens in your brain chemically when estrogen begins to decline. And so there's a lot of rational reasoning that you become unsatisfied with the life that you've created. But a lot of women say, like, especially cyclically, man, in my luteal phase, the week before my period, I could run away, get on a plane, never come back. I don't like my husband. I don't like my children. And they're very just unsatisfied. And then cyclically, as soon as their menstrual cycle hits, they're like, I like my kids again and I'm calm and I'm even keeled. So those are like, that's definitely like the emotional state that a lot of my women come in is like, I just want to divorce and I want to separate from my children forever. And I'm like, no, but you don't really. They come in with hot flashes, night sweats, sleep interrupted, a lot of weight gain. And I will say, I think hormones play about a 30 to 40% role on weight. I think that a lot of weight is food related and women aren't shifting their foods to what their bodies need as we shift into a lower level of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. And so if you keep doing what you always did, you inevitably gain weight. And I think stress management is a big one. Women, for some reason, they can't multitask the same. They can't manage their stressors the same. When stress comes their way, it's very hyper responsive to the stressor. And they don't like that. They're like, I just don't understand why I'm so hyper responsive to these things that come our way.
You just mentioned so many great things because when you look out into the world and you see memes about menopause, there's so much about hot flashes, but the list is so long and I'm definitely not putting down any of the doctors, but I have gone to someone who had said back in the day, "You're feeling this way, let's get you an anti-anxiety and we'll put you on birth control." And that
Yeah.
was like the standard answer for a long time. And I love that you are recognizing that the anxiety, the depression, all of this, the itchy skin, like the weird joint pain, the heart palpitations,
Yeah.
there's just so much stuff that we now know is that estrogen, progesterone issue. So something that you also do that I love, I think I came to you postmenopausal. So it was easier for me because I wasn't going through all the cycles anymore. I was kind of flatline on everything. And
Yeah.
so we were able to kind of play around with that. And you were so amazing at helping me find the right cocktail. I'm going to call it a cocktail of hormones, but we're always testing because this is not a one size fits all. Even in your own life, I'm finding that things change. The other thing that I'm finding that is not out there because people are coming to me and asking who does this is you are now helping women who are in their cycle. And I'd love for you to explain people who are not postmenopausal, they have not had their 12 months without their period. How are you helping women to know what's going on and how are you testing them in those phases?
Yeah. I mean, what I'm doing versus what, the healthcare world is recommending when we're shifting. So I remember being the enemy for so long. And now people are like, doctors are doing what I was doing when they were telling their patients I was going to kill them. So times are shifting, right? So, but what I do is I like to get a baseline lab. Even though labs are not the end all, I do think it's important to get that baseline to see what our numbers look like. I also like to make sure that our nutrients are at level when we hit perimenopause. Our insulin resistance goes up, our cholesterol numbers go up, our vitamin absorption goes down. And so I like to take a look at the whole picture with my women and say, okay, not only do I want to see what your hormones look like, along with your messenger hormones, your FSH and your LH, which are the communicators from your brain to your ovaries to do the things, but I want to see kind of what the whole body looks like. What other support do we need? Is the liver functioning correctly? And I also have really started looping that gut health into the picture because the reality is if the liver isn't doing your detox pathways correctly, right? You've got your two pathways. And then if you're not excreting that and having normal bowel movements, you're not getting rid of those hormones. And this is what leads to a lot of women who say, I have estrogen dominance, I have breast tenderness, I'm really, really temperamental. Estrogen dominance can cause all sorts of other array of symptoms. So, too much estrogen is just as troublesome as too little. And so I like to see what the balance is because it's not just about what your hormones are, it's what the ratios are. Because I have so many women who they start on hormones with their GYN and they have all of these terrible reactions. And when I measure them and start talking to them about their symptoms that they have, it seems like they're just out of balance. It's not that they can't use hormones, it's that their doctor threw too much at them at once, or there's one that still remains dominant, or they're not pathwaying, detox pathwaying, and getting rid of correctly. So a lot of times it's like, okay, well, we know that your hormones look good on paper, but you still don't feel good. So let's lean into these other things. What do your nutrients look like? How is your liver working? Do you have the proper genetic makeup to be metabolizing these hormones? There's so many tools now to say, how are we going to fix your hormones if your numbers on paper look good, but yet you still don't feel good?
Yes. And so let's sit on the midlife weight gain for a second. You mentioned something also about the hormones and your gut and how that plays a part. Something I did notice is the times when I was straying and I wasn't in the plan that I teach other people to do. When I was straying a
We all
little
do it.
bit, yeah, it was summer, we were away. I must not have been absorbing my hormones as well because the numbers were lower. So it's just really interesting that that connection and how they metabolize and the gut has so much to do with it. But also, I want to go back and I definitely want to talk nutrition today with you. But I want to go back to insulin resistance because there are a lot of women who hear this over and over again and they don't really understand what that means when they hit midlife, why they're more insulin resistant. But what does that mean so that they can start learning how to look out for how to fix that?
Yeah. So, your entire endocrine system, which in short is like your hormone system, are all interconnected. I know we kind of talk about them individually. You've got your female hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. You've got your thyroid hormones, right? You've got cortisol levels. You've got insulin, which is a hormone. You've got melatonin, which helps you sleep, is also a hormone. All of these hormones are interconnected, and every single one time in grad school, I can remember like trying to like piece them all together to say, okay, you've got the hypothalamus up here. How does this all spread out and interconnect? And man, there were arrows everywhere. They were going everywhere. And I was like, "Ugh, they all affect each other. If this one's off, then these are all going to be off. Something's going to be wrong with them." And so what we know from a physiological standpoint is that as estrogen declines and progesterone declines, the body's ability to be as sensitive to insulin declines. And so your body's response to that, especially if you don't modify your diet and you continue to eat the same carbohydrates that you've always eaten, is that it takes more insulin to actually break those carbohydrates or those sugars down. And so when that happens, the pancreas has to pump out more insulin. Insulin likes to communicate with the body to store belly fat. It seems to occur. And so it takes more insulin to break down the same number of carbs you're eating. And in the same moment, the body says, wow, there's so much insulin present here. It seems like we need to be storing it. And so they tuck these carbs away in our visceral fat, actually, nonetheless, which is like inside our organs. It's the worst kind of fat. You can be skinny and still look and still have visceral fat. So it's not really a visible fat. It eventually kind of becomes this belly, but it at first, it's really kind of tucked into our organs. And it's we can blame estrogen for it. Estrogen, when it drops, that pancreas says, "Gosh, we need more insulin." And if you don't shift that carb intake, you will absolutely end up in a space where you have a lot of extra kind of, we call it the ring around, the little tire around our belly.
It feels like an inner tube. I've been there.
Yeah,
I
it's
get
terrible.
it. It really
No woman
does.
wants that.
I love how you were talking about the hormones all affect each other because I think of that game at the fair, whack-a-mole, where you're just trying to get all of them under control at the same time. Because I do, I feel like everything affects everything. I would love it if we really look at what would you, in a perfect world, love with women and nutrition, what they would be doing now? And we know this is individualized. Everybody is different, but we know that there are some basics and foundations that could really help people, women, people, but a lot of us on this in that are listening are going to be going through these changes. And as we get older, like you said, we can't do what we did in our 20s. Like I can't eat if you knew what I ate like an 8-year-old, it would be
No, it's
like it'd
terrible.
be
The
horrible.
amount of alcohol I consumed in my 20s is not an acceptable behavior.
Exactly. We are in a new space and we just can't keep going with it. Any foundational sense, what would you love women to be doing nutrition wise right now?
Yeah. So nutrition wise, I'm going to expand on this because it's not just nutrition, but nutrition wise, I think higher protein. I feel like we hear this talked about a lot right now, like more protein, more protein. I feel like in general, women undereat protein. And in our defense, like our food pyramid has told us to eat 4 ounces of meat, so like it's really hard to get in your protein when we're eating 4 ounces of steak. And so we've kind of been taught the wrong food pyramid in many ways. And so protein for sure is something that I would say most women are deficient in. We need to be eating at least half of our pounds in weight. And that's at minimum, right? So if you're 130 pounds, you should be eating 65 grams of protein a day at minimum. And that's harder than it it looks. Like, it feels like it's like, "Oh, 65." And then I started, like, looking at my meals, and I was like, "I eat 2 eggs for breakfast every morning." And I was like, "Oh, an
12
egg is
grams.
like
That's it.
it's measly. It's a measly amount." And I'm like, "Breakfast? Like, that's crazy." And coming from a girl who didn't eat breakfast, I thought I was doing great by eating 2 eggs for breakfast now, right? It became really tricky for me until I started, like, doing the math, and I was like, "Oh, I need to eat a lot more protein." And protein doesn't have to come from just animals. It comes from beans, it comes from greens, it comes from some clean dairies. I'm not a big dairy eater, but I do eat cottage cheese. It's what I had for breakfast. But protein is for sure a big one. I would say 90% of my patient population, male and female, are vitamin D deficient. Vitamin D is vitally important for our immune health, for a reduction in cancer, for happiness, for lubrication of those joints. And it's very difficult to get the amount of sun that you need to get that vitamin D. The reality is we just don't live a life where we're exposed to that amount of sunshine anymore. In the winter, especially, we're covered in clothes, we're inside our house. And so there's fewer number of hours of daylight to begin with. And so we just get a lot less sun exposure, which is where we really get the communication to create vitamin D in our body. And so I would say 90% of my patient population is on a vitamin D support. B12 is another one that I see a lot of people need support on. It comes from animal products. It's not really found in plants. There's a few. I had a woman correct me one time and said, "Oh, there's seaweed that has it." And I'm like, "Okay, well, there's seaweed. But other than that, like
Mhm.
the general plants that we eat and out of our grocery store do not contain B12." And so I would say at least 60% of my patient population is on a B12 support. And magnesium is the other one. Magnesium for women is a huge one. It helps us metabolize our hormones. It's also what helps us excrete and have normal, regular bowel movements. It's used for 300 chemical reactions in our body. And almost every female I test is deficient in magnesium. And there's multiple ways to test magnesium. There's like very short acting ways to test magnesium, which is what most healthcare providers order when you ask them to test it. And then there's other testing called red blood cell testing, which gives us about a 30-day to 45-day window of what those numbers look like in our bodies. So it's a much broader picture. And that's what I order. I want to see how long we're sustaining this magnesium in our system. But generally, magnesium is another one that seems to deplete real quick.
Good. Yeah, the protein, we know the protein thing is out there and it is hard, but when you get in the habit and you can get at least 25 a meal. I eat 4 times a day, so it's a little bit easier for me. But yeah, the cottage cheese craze, I laugh. I was like, that's so silly. Well, now that I have to up my protein, I am in on the cottage cheese trend. With it.
Yeah, I
um
love it.
I actually love the taste of it. Some people I know are
Me too.
not digging it, but and it's easy. You open the container, you eat some, and you go.
Yes.
It's a half a cup for 15 grams of protein. It's amazing. I'm just to throw some things out there to remind women, what are some things you wish they were not eating right now? And maybe not cutting out completely, but what do we
Sure.
need to lay back on that we could do in our 20s?
Beverages are the first thing that I talk to my patients about because beverages are such an easy way to consume calories that you don't even know that you're intaking and you do it throughout the day. Like I had a guy, it was a gentleman actually, and his blood sugar was up and he was like, "I eat so healthy. I don't eat bread, I don't eat pasta, I don't eat rice, I'm not a sweet eater." He's like, "I just don't eat them." And I was like, "Well, what are you drinking?" And come to find out, he was drinking 8 Gatorades a day. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, first of all, whoa, if you want electrolytes, there's better ways. Second of all, 8 Gatorades is excessive. But the amount of sugar inside those Gatorades is crazy. They are not really a health drink in any way, shape, or form. And people know sodas aren't health drinks. People know that sweet tea isn't a health drink. But people are duped by Gatorades and juices, smoothies. These tend to
Yeah.
be where people get kind of hung up. They're like, "I have a smoothie every morning." And I'm like, "Okay, well, let's talk about the portion of fruit you put in your smoothie." And it's like 17 strawberries and 2 bananas. And I'm like, if I put that on a plate and asked you to eat that for breakfast, would you eat 2 bananas and 17 strawberries? And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Right. But that's what you're doing." And so even though it's fruit, there's still a lot of sugar in it, right? Even though it's juice, even if it's 100% juice, there's a lot of sugar in it. So beverages are the first thing that I say, okay, let's analyze what we're sipping because it's an easy calorie and it's easy to overlook and think, oh, it's just not a lot. And meanwhile, it's a whole meal's worth of calories that you're sipping throughout the day. So beverages are number one. In general, I feel like women tend to eat off of their children's plates. They finish their children's food. It becomes less in their 40s because their kids get older. But I do feel like a lot of women with kids between like 0 and 12 tend to eat their children's foods because we don't like to waste, right? So instead of just throwing it out, we finish their plate on top of what we've eaten. And so I tell women all the time, like, stay away from your kids' snacks. Stay away from your kids' food. You don't need to take a handful of those goldfish when you're serving them to your child. I don't think goldfish are a great food anyways, period, but you definitely don't need them. At least your kid's running in circles while he's burning those calories. So those are the other things is like less snacks and let's watch the beverages are typically the first two things I go to. I try not to cut women off entirely. Like I like cookies. I do, right? Them often? No. Have I found healthy
Yep.
alternatives or lower sugar alternatives? Yes. But have I never eaten a cookie? No, that's definitely not going to happen.
Oh my gosh, the Clean Plate Club is a real thing. And that's why you send people to me so I can work through all that with
Yeah.
them and the emotional eating because it's a thing. I did the exact same thing. I did not want to waste the food. I was brought up in a Clean Plate Club, so I didn't want my kids' food to be thrown out. Plus, as a mom, you're running around and you probably haven't even eaten a real meal anyway. So you're just
Right.
snacking. Snacking's a whole nother thing. And I have learned also that when you're constantly eating and grazing and snacking, that's a whole nother thing with my blood sugar when I tested it, that it was just constantly on the roller coaster. So
Yeah.
the protein, doing that instead really helped in all the conversations we've had about that. I wanted to ask you too, as we were talking about this, because you did bring up not eating breakfast. And I just would love your thoughts about fasting because a lot of women are given, so many mixed signals on
Yeah.
fasting, intermittent fasting, when to do it, when it's appropriate. And we also are given, I think, this idea that it's okay for everybody.
Yeah. I will tell you, I haven't done a ton of research on fasting, especially intermittent fasting. I think fasting in stents is a beautiful thing. So, when I talk to my patients, I actually prefer them to go on like a 3 to 5 day fast and get the autophagy benefits and the gut rest benefits, right? But I just I don't know how I feel personally about intermittent fasting. I know what the data says, and it's very conflicting. Some support it entirely, right? And some say, okay, well, there's very particular ways that you can do it when you're a menstruating female. And then a lot of data says, like, once you've hit menopause, you really shouldn't be doing it, that it's not good for your cortisol, it's not good for your hormones. There's so much data out there that I could argue all the ways. And so I also go by, again, individualized medicine. How do you feel when you're doing this? When you are intermittent fasting, do you wake up feeling vitalized and ready to go and good until 2 o'clock when you decide to eat your first meal? Or are you dragging? Do you feel like you're not getting good sleep? Do you feel like you have brain fog? If you're experiencing negative consequences from this fast, don't do it. But if you are that woman who wakes up and you can get to 2 o'clock feeling like $1 million and you're not surviving off caffeine to do it, then good on you because I feel like listening to your body is really important. And that's where that individual status comes from, right? Is like, what do you feel when you're doing these things? But as a general rule, like long fasts, 3 to 5 day fasts, the data that supports the benefits of doing those is fascinating. I don't think if you have an eating disorder, you should be doing these things. I don't, if there's past history of potential eating disorders, it's probably not a good idea for you. But the reality is I always say women get to day 3 and then push to day 4 because day 4 is where you feel the best. Day 4 is where you have that mental clarity and you're really feeling good. The first 2 to 3 days are like suffering. And you're like, why would I ever do that again? But by the time you hit day 4, you feel really good. But I also recommend doing it with electrolytes. But the cancer risk, decline that happens during that time frame is fascinating data.
Wow, that is fascinating. I'm proud of you because I know you've done it, and it's tough. I feel like things have been different throughout different phases of my life, and I could not do it in the past because you mentioned very important things. I had very disordered eating. So when I did it in the past, it was for the wrong reasons. It wasn't for autophagy. It was
Right.
truly for weight loss. And to have that willpower, and putting that in air quotes for those of you who are not on video. I also found that once I made it through perimenopause and I was postmenopausal, it was very different. I didn't have the same cortisol reaction. I could do it. I was more leveled up, but I was also on hormones and my thyroid
Right.
was balanced. So I love that. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. And I love your kind of open ended way of talking about it because it is, again, so individualized. But the data is really, I love that you mentioned that. I'd love to look into that more. And speaking of the gut, let's move into gut health because I was coming to you for
It's my
hormones.
favorite.
Yes, I was coming for hormones. However, we know something else is going on. I had, and people who have been longtime listeners know that I did a whole gut health series, including my whole parasite journey. So we found out through you, you helped me through doing a stool test. We found out that I had a parasite, which was lovely. And we walked through a lot of different steps. And one of the things that I was so excited about with you is we tried the traditional method. We tried all the antibiotics. There were 3 antibiotics that I had to go through. I think 2 were combined. And we
Yeah.
had that. It didn't work. So we talked about the herbal, and the herbal did end up working. But if it weren't for you really encouraging me to do that stool test, there's no way that I would have known that was what was going on because constipation, we could chalk that up to so many things. I was drinking all the water. I
Right.
was so upset that I had to do all the commercial laxatives and stool softeners. It was bothering me. I thought maybe it was a menopausal thing. So let's talk about what you're finding when people are coming in. What's happening when you are talking to people about their gut health? Kind of talk about what we want to go into it. What are you finding with women and their guts, especially in this age range in midlife?
Well, women have so many constipation complaints, and a lot of women complain about constipation cyclically, right? So if it's cyclical, it leans more to, okay, this is likely a low progesterone issue or a magnesium deficiency. And so a lot of women come in with gut complaints. And here's the biggest challenge with gut complaints is they've been living this way for 30 years, right? They're like, "Oh, I've been doing this since I'm 10. My mom was giving me prune juice and Caro syrup," right? And my whole life. And I'm like, that's just because you've been doing it your whole life doesn't mean it's normal. And I think that's where it gets super tricky is we get so adapted, especially gut wise. We get adapted to bloating when we eat. We get adapted to this kind of yucky sensation after we eat food. I mean, we've all done it, right? Not to dog this restaurant, but you go to the hibachi restaurant, you overeat, right? And you leave and nobody feels good. Nobody feels good when they leave that restaurant. It's like oil and rice and it's delicious, right? But soy mixed in and your gut is not happy. It's not happy, but we do it again and we're all like, "Oh, it's just the food." But the reality is like it tells us something. Our body isn't capable of digesting what you've put in. And we ignore these messages because they kind of subside because we go to sleep and our gut gets
Mhm.
some rest and when we wake up we feel better again and then we do the same thing again and again and again. And it just becomes our norm. And it's not normal, even if it's been your norm. I didn't even know I had gut issues. I tested my gut because I had the autoimmune and I found out I had all sorts of stuff wrong with my gut. I had H. pylori, I had strep, I had stuff. I didn't have parasites. I had a poor working immune system in my gut. My IgA was terrible. And I was like, I should probably fix all of this. And when I fixed it, I mean, it sounds disgusting, but like I thought I made a teenage boy proud when I was done having my bowel movements. And I didn't know I was capable of doing such a thing. I wouldn't have said I had any gut issues. I went to the bathroom every day, bloating here and there, typically cyclical. If I ate yucky food, it threw my gut off a little bit. But generally speaking, I would have said, oh, I can eat anything and I feel great. And then I fixed my gut and I was like, no, I had no idea what my body was actually capable of doing in digestion. It was just a totally different, it was a game changer. And so Many women say that. They're like, "I thought I felt good. I had no idea what my gut was supposed to feel like." And I'm like, "I know, it's crazy." So not everyone has parasites, not everyone has H. pylori, right? We all kind of have different things. I would say 30% of my patients test positive for parasites. I like to say that because there's this like TikTok trend where everyone has parasites. And I don't know what the fascination is, but not everyone in America has parasites. I do a lot of that testing. It's just not accurate. But I've never met someone with a perfect gut, like yet. I am going to test my 17-year-old when she turns 18 and see what she looks like because there's companies that will buy your stool and you make a ton of money. So I'm like, I'm going to test her and see if she has the perfect gut. She's been raised really well, but since she got her driver's license, she's discovered fast foods. We'll see. We'll see.
That is so true. When they get their license and they have a car and they have money, it's all over for about 5 more years. And then they turn around, they come back to you and they start sending pictures of the food that they make, which is amazing. But I'm laughing about
Yeah.
yes,
For
it turns
Lent.
around, I promise you. But what
That's
I'm
so good to
laughing
hear.
about is the normalization that we do on our gut, and we just eat the same things over again. We just accept it. My
Yeah.
poor stepson used to, we'd go out to dinner and he'd always, we'd all have to wait for him because he'd be in the bathroom. I'm sure he would love that I just shared that. But it's the truth, the poor thing. We always think, oh, that's just normal. And everybody
Yeah.
normalized it. We'll just be waiting. And even me, and here's an interesting little factoid is when I would eat even natural peanut butter, my husband would laugh. He's like, why do you keep doing that? Well, it was the emotional eater in me that wanted the peanut butter. But as soon as I cleaned my gut out, I was able to have it, but I was not able to have as much gluten. I can't tolerate that on a daily basis.
Me
So,
either.
yeah, and there's I know the whole world is saying, I'm gluten intolerant or I can't take gluten, but until you really experiment with it, it's interesting because I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody can actually. I don't know, but
I mean, generally speaking, I would say no,
okay.
especially with Americanized gluten, right? So I wouldn't
Mhm.
say all gluten is created equal. I would say our modified wheat that we unfortunately are served in this country is not really tolerable to anyone's gut. We just become more tolerant to the feel of of how we feel. But I would say gluten is the
Yeah.
number one when I put people on an elimination diet. It's the number one thing that they're like, oh my gosh, I don't think I can ever go back. But I will say I have been relatively gluten free, not because I have a gluten like celiac disease. I do carry both celiac genes genetically. And so I'm very cautious about gluten because I don't want to get celiac disease. But, I took my daughter in March to New York City, and I grew up going to New York City. And there are just like staples that you must have when you go to New York City.
Yep.
And for me, it's like I need a bagel, I need pizza, I need Chinese food. Like these are just like the three things that are
Or the
mandatory, right?
pretzel and the hot dog. Those are the ones I always go for.
Okay. And so, like, I caved that week that I brought my daughter
Mm.
for her 16th birthday and her best friend, and I ate a bagel for breakfast one morning, and I ate a New York style slice of pizza, and I had glorious Chinese food in the basement of Chinatown, and I was surprisingly unaffected. And I think that I was unaffected by eating those things because I hadn't eaten them in so long that my gut was healthy enough to handle the intake. So when I came home, I didn't decide, well, because I was unaffected in New York, I should just go back to eating it all. I went back to my normal ways and I'm going to spend a couple of weeks in New York this summer while my daughter dances and I'm probably going to eat Chinese food again. So we'll see, like we'll see what happens.
I
But
think that's
I think
great.
yeah, I think generally gluten's a no-go for 90% of the American population.
But you just shared something that's really powerful is having it once in a while is very different than having it on a daily basis. Having that, and I know, and my poor daughters are going to hate me for saying this, but the avocado toast every single day, or,
Right,
not putting some eggs in there and taking a break from it, things like that. And that's just an example. There's,
sure,
the clients that I have that can't not have a sandwich every single day, but yet they're struggling. Again, it's not taking it out forever, but having it when it's really special, like those moments when you were in New York, that is a special time. Going for a while and then having date night and having
right.
what you want and not having the dessert every day, having it on that special occasion where you can really enjoy it. Because I'm finding the other thing is when we are eating those things, the gluten, the sugar, it's more out of coping and stress than it is out of enjoyment and really loving the taste of it.
Right.
So, yes,
Absolutely. I mean, I
which
eat
yeah.
I mean, eat like Easter, I don't really eat dairy anymore, but I make this incredible banana pudding that is like, I don't know,
Oh,
17,000,000 different types of dairy mixed in. And I
gosh.
took one spoonful and someone was like, "That's it?" And I was like, "It's not worth feeling sick." So I got one taste and I'm done. Like you don't need the whole bowl. Like so many
Yes.
times it's just one little like satisfaction and you're like, "Okay, that's all I needed."
Taste it and enjoy that bite, though. That's the
Yeah.
important thing. My husband would love that. Banana pudding is his thing. But
It's so
leaving,
good.
yes, it is so good. The stress and cortisol, how is that wreaking havoc on the gut and the hormones?
Well, that's a big, 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 big question.
Me too.
When it's kind of which one's doing which, and that's really where it gets tricky when we talk about perimenopause and menopausal women is like which one came first, the cortisol issues or the hormone issues, because they are again super interconnected, right? They're intertwined. When we are stressed, the major priority or the largest priority to our body is surviving that stressor. So all the other things that we need to survive get kind of put on the back burner so that we can thrive through the stress. And so hormone production, balancing, digestion, detox pathways, all of those things decline because the body is preparing for the bear attack. And unfortunately, I think our society has structured lives of women in particular that we are supposed to be all the things at all the times. And it's really difficult because we can't be the full time worker, employee, and then be the full time mom and caretaker to the house, and then pay all the bills and be the house calendar. And so I think that that dynamic of what women are expected to do inevitably brings stress. I also feel like we are not given the space to heal from previous stressors. And going right back to that, the body keeps the score, right? Like when we're a child and our parents are screaming at us, or we live in an alcoholic home, or we live in a home where our mother is being abused, or whatever that situation may be, or we get in an accident, right? Like it doesn't even have to be abuse situations. It can be a car accident. It can be the loss of a loved one that like really intertwined the dynamic of your household and shifted that whole dynamic. It can be very traumatic. And if you've never been allowed to feel those feels, you live in fight or flight. And every time one trauma hits, any sort of stress happens, the amygdala keeps all of those traumas together. And so it's this kind of compounding effect of stress. And I just don't think we live in a society where our women are allowed to feel their feels. They're not given that space where it's said, oh, we're crazy, we're depressed, here's your psych meds, which goes into a whole different rabbit hole. But I feel like I rarely meet a woman who's at peace. There's always some form of trauma that has never really been healed. And when they live in fight or flight all the time, those hormones are very, very discombobulated.
Wow. That's powerful. And what I love though is you recognize that with your patients, there's so much that we're bringing in, but it's compounded even today because we don't get any space and we don't give ourselves any space. I think that's part
Well,
of
we're
it
taught
too.
not to have boundaries. Like, there's a book called Boundaries. I remember reading it in my 20s, and I was like, this is profound. Like, this is an incredible book because I'm really good at keeping boundaries. It's actually a skill I'm very good at. Maybe it's because in my 20s I read this book. Maybe it's just part of my personality. But I feel like in general, women are taught to self sacrifice, right? And we have estrogen, which convinces us that we should self sacrifice, which we should for children. We are these caretakers for everyone. And so women in general tend to self sacrifice. Now, the shift happens in the 40s, and we start recognizing that we've been self sacrificing and nobody's been our caretaker. And this is when we grow bitter and angry and frustrated. And this is why we want to get on a plane and fly away. I remember looking at my husband maybe about a year and a half ago, and I said, I'm not having fun anymore. This is not fun. Like, I know that it looked like fun for all those years, and I'm telling you it was, but this is not fun anymore. And I need someone else to like pony up because I'm not doing it all. I'm going to run away. I am not having fun anymore.
I love it. Pony up. I think
Yeah,
I'm gonna
because I
save
was the
that
one doing it
one.
all, right? I
Yes.
was cooking the meals and shopping and keeping the house clean and working. Now I've only ever worked part-time. I have 3 children, right? Like, my husband's a good man. He's a fabulous husband. He's a great partner. But I was like, "I'm tired. I can't do it
Yeah.
all anymore. I'm tired, and I'm being pulled in so many directions, and I'm telling you, I'm gonna have a nervous breakdown. Like, this is not healthy." And so I had to start establishing new boundaries because I had set those boundaries, even my healthy ones. And I realized I actually don't like these boundaries. I need to reestablish these boundaries. And I do say a household usually throws a hissy fit when a woman establishes her boundaries and they're less in their favor, right? Like my kids did not like that they had to start helping and do the chores and help clean and kind of keep things organized. They didn't like that. I was not going to be their slave anymore, right? Per se. I'm not, you know what I mean?
I know. And Brene Brown had a great point about that. The people who don't like your boundaries are the ones who are not benefiting anymore. And I think we all start realizing that. Thank you for normalizing that for so many women. That just probably opens some eyes and hearts to the fact that you're not a mean, bitter person. You are just at that point where you are ready. You're ready to set those
Yeah. You're not
boundaries.
having fun anymore.
I'm not having fun. Kimberly, I would love it if you would just give maybe 2 or 3 things that you would love for women to be doing to help themselves, their health, mentally, emotionally, or physically. What could they be doing daily? Just little things that would at least get them started.
Yeah. I always tell my women to start these early habits. I think giving themselves 10 minutes in the morning is so important. And that's really hard when kids are young. I get it, right? Like I can remember my kids are a little bit older now, but I can remember them being at my bedside, milk, 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 milk. And I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just need a minute. But find 10 minutes, preferably first thing in the morning, to give yourself a moment to breathe. Step outside, enjoy the fresh air, be barefoot in the grass if that means you're taking your dog out and that's your excuse. If you have to take your kids out with you, let them run in their pajamas. But like give yourself a moment of 10 minutes outside to just enjoy God's creation and like take that moment of gratitude because it's so easy for us to get into this I'm not having fun anymore mentality. And we forget how lovely our lives really are. So give yourself that moment to have some gratitude for what you have. It only takes a couple of minutes to do it. It's such an easy way to start the day. So have a moment of gratitude. I do breath work in the morning a lot. So I'll go outside. I happen to have a house that faces the east. And so I go out, face the east, let the sun shine on my face, and I do 2 minutes of breath work and start my day that way. Pay attention to your food choices. I think it's important. And especially the younger you are, the more you're influencing your children's choices. So I think it's even easier to say, like, don't bring those foods into your house. Not only are you going to benefit your own health, but you're going to benefit your household health. And they're going to throw hissy fits. My kids still ask where the Ritz crackers are. And I'm like, yeah, that's not happening. Sorry about your luck. And on vacation, sometimes I buy them a box of, organic Ritz crackers. And you think that I just like Santa came. So, be careful about what's coming in your home, control that. That's much easier than saying, I can't have these things. It's just, I'm not even going to buy them anymore. Find those substitutes that can come in your home. And so it doesn't feel totally sacrificial. It's just a shift. But be that power who's going to make that shift for your household and say, well, if you don't like it, you go to the store and buy it. But this is what I'm buying. And I need this for my own health. And when I'm healthier, the household is healthier. So make better food choices for your household, which makes it easier for you to eat healthy. And third is that boundaries. I mean, set that boundary. Your kids are capable of doing more than you give them credit for. And years ago, I read something in a book that was astounding. And I'm not saying I did this well, okay? But it said, we in this generation tend to give our children less chores and less tasks because we don't want to deal with the cleanup of their mistakes. So I read this, right? And the example in the book was you ask your kid to take the trash out. They don't put the lid on correctly. You wake up in the morning and a raccoon has strewn the trash everywhere. And you think, if I had just taken the freaking trash out myself, then I wouldn't be cleaning this trash up right now. So the next time the trash is full, you don't ask your kid to do it. You do it because you don't want to pick up the trash the next time. And instead of teaching your child how to lock the lid, you now take the chore of taking the trash out every single time. And it happened to me. I
Yeah.
asked my kid to go get a straw for herself and she spilled the entire box of straws. And I laughed to myself saying, well, here we are. If I had just gotten the straw, we wouldn't be picking up the entire box of them. So your kids are capable. Take a breath, teach them how to do the things so that you don't have to. Because if you don't set those boundaries and let these, like let them do for themselves, you're going to do it all. And it's exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting.
Absolutely wonderful, wonderful advice. And I think that was a really good mix of both the physical and the emotional things that we need to be doing for ourselves. And Kimberly, you have a new company, and I would love for you to just share just a little bit about your company and where everyone can find you when we wrap up the episode.
Okay. So my new company is called Get Well, Stay Well. And it definitely came from my own journey because I got well and then my goal was to stay well. And it's a journey, right? So Get Well, Stay Well is the name of my company. It's mostly telehealth. I will be offering some in office visits come fall so that my patients can get their physicals. It is a primary care office. So I do all things primary care. That's where my training is based out or in. And, but I do specialize in so many functional health things. I do a lot of gut health. I do a lot of hormones. I'm very good at fixing autoimmune diseases and repairing the body with autoimmune diseases. It's pretty exciting to kind of see this transition for me. Yeah, because I'd been in the same place of employment for 12 years and I loved that place of employment. It was a place of growth and support and love, but it's nice to have something of my own now. My website's www.getwellstaywell.live, Live. You can schedule appointments there, answer questions. I have an assistant who can follow through. You can text the number on that page as well. But it's exciting. It's a new journey for me. It's mine. I'm really proud of it. It's really exciting.
And you should be very proud. And I've been with you probably for about, I'm going to guess 5 years now. And watching this transition has been so exciting. And I, of course, have benefited not just as a client, and I say client because that's what I have, patient, but also because I know I can send people to you with so much confidence. Kimberly, I want to thank you for being here because not only are you so knowledgeable and you're sharing with women, but you advocate for them, you make them feel empowered, and you're super compassionate. So thank you. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. It's my first podcast. I was terrified.
And it's amazing. And I knew we'd have a good time because we just, when we're together, we talk all the time anyway.
I know.
And
We
it's
always say, let's go
great.
have coffee. And then
Yes,
it
let's go
just,
have coffee. And we
I
get
don't
to
drink
have
coffee,
this
but
time
let's go have
together.
coffee.
We'll do it. And for everyone in the audience, thank you for being here today. Make sure that you connect with us on social media. I'll put all of that also into the show notes with Kimberly's website, and nourish your entire life and give yourself grace today.
That's right.